Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Acushnet School Committee meeting of Tuesday, February 8th. Just want to note to the public that we had some technical difficulties, so we're unable to live stream tonight's meeting, but it will be aired on Community TV. So we apologize for that hiccup. And I will call this meeting to order. The meeting is being video and audio recorded for future cable broadcast. Please silence all cell phones for the duration of the meeting, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll begin with the approval of minutes, payroll, and warrants. If I could request.
We have to open the meeting, right, and take roll call.
You do?
To open the meeting?
Oh, okay. Do we need to roll call vote open?
Not more in person.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
There we go.
Virtual, yes.
Okay, good. It's okay.
Thank
Keep me
you.
in check. All right, so we're gonna, if I could request an approval of the minutes of December 7th, please, 2001.
So moved. Second?
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I could request another approval, please, of the minutes of January 26th, 2022.
So move.
Second?
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
If I could request an approval, please, of the executive session minutes of January 26, 2022. These are not to be released.
I so move the approval of those executive session minutes of January 26th.
Okay.
Second?
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Thank you. And finally, if I could request a motion, please, of approval of the payroll and warrants.
I so move that motion to approve the payroll and warrants.
Second?
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, moving on to the delegation portion of our meeting this evening. We actually have two people who would like to speak at tonight's delegation, so I'd like to welcome our first public speaker to the podium, Kathy Charpentier of 122 Francis Street. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Kathy Charpentier. I am a kindergarten teacher at the elementary school and have been for about 15 years. So I'm here tonight to talk about a program that has been started in our district in partnership with the Bristol County Sheriff's K-9 Unit, who I'm so surprised to see are here tonight. I wasn't aware of that. So this program, for those of you that don't know, is a program which brings COVID-19 sniffing dogs into our building. And the dogs are brought into the building and they're sniffing out common areas. They're not sniffing people. They're sniffing like in the library and in the foyer and the cafeteria, common areas in the building. And they're specially trained, as I've been told, to sniff out COVID on surfaces. It gives us a heads up in the buildings where areas might need to be more deeply cleaned. So it's been a useful tool. The kids have seen the dogs being walked around while they're at lunch. They see them go by in the cafeteria or in the hallways, and they're very excited about these dogs. I'm a huge dog person. I'm a big dog lover, so I as well have been very excited to see these dogs in the building. Well, last week it was brought to our attention that we could opt into having the dogs come into our classrooms to interact with the students, to interact with us. It was totally optional, and of course my immediate response was, yes, I'm in, but then I had to take a step back and say, okay, this is about the kids, so I need to discuss this with the kids. I can't just make this choice on my own personal feeling. So I had a big discussion with my students about the dogs that they've been seeing around the building. What's your feeling on the dogs? How do you feel about them coming into our classroom? Because if they do come in, they're going to be up and close and personal with you. And I explained to them that they're very, very friendly dogs. They're not going to bite you. They're very friendly. The overwhelming response from my students was unbelievable. I did have one little girl who was a little timid, and I spoke to her and she said, I don't really like dogs, I like cats. So I told her, well, if they come in, we don't have to have the dog come in. And she was like, no, it's okay, but I don't want to go near the dog. Okay, so we handled that situation. So Tuesday of last week, I got the call that they were coming into our room. So Dr. Bailey, these two wonderful officers from the Bristol County K-9 unit, Officer Fonts from our Acushnet Police Department, and I apologize if I'm forgetting anyone else that was in that crowd that came in with the dog, because I was just so excited to have Hunter come into our classroom. And I so learned that Hunter is a 14-month-old black lab, and she was phenomenal. They let her off the leash, and she went around the building. She went around my classroom. She was sniffing everything. She went into the bathroom. She was climbing, jumping up on tables, sniffing. The kids were enthralled. They couldn't get enough of watching Hunter do her job. Now, as much kudos as I give to Hunter, these officers were exceptional. The way they interacted with my students, the language that they used that was so age appropriate with my students, explaining what the dog was doing, explaining why this was happening, it was just phenomenal. The dog then, they asked, would it be okay if we let the dog go around and interact with the kids? The kids, of course, ate that up. To see the joy and happiness on these kids' faces after everything that they have been dealing with for 2 years, all they hear about is COVID. That's all my students know. They're 5. This has been their life. So to finally have a positive experience with COVID, where it was a dog and it was friendly, I can't even tell you how much joy they had from that. Dr. Bailey, I know, can attest to it because she was in there. The little girl that was afraid, these officers went and sat with her over to the side and explained to her about how friendly the dog was. They didn't let the dog go near her because they knew she didn't want the dog near her. It was just, I don't even have words to describe what an incredible day it was for everyone involved. Then we get Officer Fonts, who went above and beyond as well. As they were leaving, he said to my students, hey guys, do you want to do a contest? And of course, 5-year-olds eat this stuff up. Sure, they said. He said, how about if you all draw a picture of Hunter? Do your best and draw a picture of Hunter. And I'll come back and we'll judge them and we'll get some prizes. Now this was last Tuesday. So my kids, of course, we finished reading. Can we draw our pictures? Yep, they did it. I clipped them together, put them on the shelf, and honestly, I kind of forgot about it. Fast forward a week, today I get a knock at my door. It's Officer Fonts. Do you have the pictures? He didn't forget. He judged those pictures. He said, would it be okay if we pick 2 that you think are the best and that we agree on, and can I get them a prize? Now, he'd already given me a stack of tattoos for the kids, for everybody. I said, sure, that's fine. I said, okay, I'll be back. Now, I'm thinking he's just going to go finish touring the building with the dog and then come back to my room. No, he left and went back to the police station, came back to school with prizes for these kids. It's been above and beyond my expectations when I heard about this program. So I just want to thank everyone that has made this possible. Dr. Bailey for getting this partnership going. The Bristol County, K-9 unit, our own Acushnet Police Department. Kudos to all of you. Thank you for bringing joy to some 5-year-olds who have had a rough time. Who've had a rough time with this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have another member of the public who'd like to speak. I'd like to welcome Jeremy Fonts. I hope I'm saying your last name correctly.
Acushnet summed it up perfectly.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. So we'll move on to the next item in our agenda, which is old business. So Dr. Bailey, I'm going to hand it to you so you can give us the latest COVID update and mask
Absolutely.
mandate update.
Absolutely. I'd like to call Kim Betancourt up to the podium, our Director of Student Services. As the committee knows, we took a vote recently, and we have a new at-home testing program. And Ms. Betancourt is going to give us an update of when those forms will be going home, where we're at with the new program, and what the new test and stay will look like, the difference. Just as a review, because we already voted on it.
Sure. So forms should be going out tomorrow. There'll be a letter home with going home to parents with active links for all of the information, opt-ins, test program information in that letter. I just wanted to reiterate for everybody to understand what the changes are going to look like. We have opted, as school committee voted at the last meeting, to offer at-home kits to families. Families will get 1 kit per student. That kit contains 2 tests. So you will test once 1 week, once the second week, and then you'll get another kit for the 3rd week. The testing in school will still be symptomatic testing. So if a student comes to school and has symptoms, visits the nurse, they will be able to be tested. But we will no longer have the daily testing like we've had through Test and Stay, where we can test students for 5 days in a row. If they remain negative, they stay at school. That option is no longer available. So the program is basically now 2 elements. One is the home test kits, and one is the symptomatic testing at school.
I think it's during this.
And every staff member and every
Staff
family
person
member
also,
must opt in for their student.
Yeah, in the letter that's going home tomorrow, there'll be a link that parents can click on. That'll bring you right into the opt-in form. Once you do that, that's all you have to do. For any parent who has not signed up previously for Test and Stay and does want to be part of the symptomatic testing, there's also a link that you can give consent for that. And all of the information that you'll need is contained in the letter, including if you do opt in, we'll send home information on how to administer the test, when to administer the test, videos, written information, and pretty much every resource around how to test and when to test.
So the great thing about this is anyone can opt in at any time. Desi will be reevaluating this in April, and we will see how it goes. Students will be taking the test home with them, so we will have some directions for our teachers and our students, but we're moving forward with it starting tomorrow with the letters going out. Does anybody have any questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Betancourt.
Thank you, Mrs. Betancourt.
The second agenda item under old business is superintendent's evaluation. And if you recall, when we had a training, we talked about narrowing down the focus indicators. So this is not anything to focus on, but I would like a vote on this. If you look in your packet, I did do a separate sheet in addition to the rubric, but it looks like this. Okay? And what I did was I went through all of my goals and put forth the ones that most closely aligned. So under Standard 1, it would be 1A, curriculum, and 1C, assessment. Under Standard 2, environment. Under Standard 3, engagement and family concerns. Under Standard 4, communications and continuous learning. And the idea here is, obviously, I'm responsible for the entire rubric, right? But this will just give the committee a focus, and it will show how it's a little bit more aligned with my goals. So if there's no questions, I would just ask the committee to take a vote on that.
Okay.
And
Any
I can certainly
questions?
give more information as time goes on, because as you know, this is a 2-year
Right,
process.
right. I don't have any questions, but any questions from the committee?
Dr. Bailey, was this the thing that we had talked about, where if we were putting together the agenda, we could kind of direct
Yep.
line to some of these things?
Yeah, so
Okay.
as you know, the last agenda, I started writing down things, and then I started thinking about a different way to do it, because I think what will happen is you're going to end up with a bunch of agendas with things all over. So what I'm now doing is I'm going to establish an Excel sheet. I'm going to put down all of these focus indicators and the goals, and we'll have it so that I can add the meetings and the agenda items so that it'll be in one place. So I'm working on that. I think it'll be a little easier so
That will be
that, you know,
helpful.
you're not looking through agendas for, you know, standard 1C, right?
Yep,
It's going to
yep.
be all together. So I think that'll be easier. And plus, the public doesn't really understand when I write all those notes on the agenda, so I think this will be a better process as we move forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely think that will be a little bit more clear
Yeah,
of
yeah.
a process. So we'll see how that goes. All right. If I could have a motion of approval, please, on the focus indicators included in your packet.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just
All
going to continue under
Yeah.
new business. We have a very special retirement recognition tonight. Michael Garnett I'd love for him to come forward, and maybe Steve Willett, his supervisor, and Kristen Flynn will be speaking. But I'm going to turn the mic over to Kristen at this time. But Michael, I'd love for you to come up. We're so happy that, we wish you the best with your retirement, and I know there's people here who would like to say a few words. Michael is our head custodian at the elementary school. So I'm not sure, are you starting? Okay.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome, Michael. Tonight's a special night. In a few weeks, you will retire from service with Acushnet Public Schools after over 34 years. So that's quite an accomplishment. We don't see that kind of longevity and dedication and loyalty to employers anymore. So first of all, thank you very much for your loyalty and dedication. Just a quick, history of Michael's employment. He started as a provisional custodian in 1988, where he filled in for custodian on leave of absence. He was appointed to be a permanent custodian in July of 1989, and he was appointed head custodian January 30th, 2001, the position he has served in since. Michael is a very, if someone asked me to describe Michael, I would say he's a hard worker. He's very, like I said, loyal. He has outstanding attendance. And in fact, when I, took a peek in your personnel file to highlight some of these accomplishments, your evaluations consistently stated that. I'll read a few. Outstanding attendance, extremely hard worker, willing to do anything asked of him, pleasant to everyone, takes pride in his work, is conscientious. One school principal said, "We could not run our school without him." So those are pretty high compliments, and I would have to say, after working with you for over 16 years, Michael, I would, if anyone said to me, "How would you describe Michael?" those words would come to mind. A few others: reliable, conscientious again, and goes above and beyond. Now, one quick thing I want to say about being reliable and outstanding attendance, I think this is more than exemplary. Michael took 0 days sick time, 0 days off, 31 out of 33 years.
Wow.
So that is something to be.
Wow.
We don't see that very often, so thank you, Michael. I didn't say 34 because that's all I could go back in our records. So I went back as far as I could. So other than, the last year or so, which, we understand, you took 0 days in every single school year. So when people say you were reliable, you can't dispute that. Michael's been our historian. When we want to know what's happened before, Michael has an outstanding memory and a recall, and he helps us out because we've had turnover with staff and administrators, so he's the go-to person for all things that have happened at the schools. He keeps us updated, leaves supervisors notes, and he just recently gave us this, which was very helpful, with some, some history on the 16 principals you served under, and countless teachers and staff. No details, no secrets, but just the fact, of his longevity here. Like I said, he's also conscientious. There's some things in here meant for us to remember to do. Michael will, keep me and Steve on our toes and remind us of things, of deadlines, of things that we need to do. So that's always appreciated. Just this week, I got a purchase order from him to replace the American flag at the elementary school. So we want to make sure, I think Michael wanted to make sure we have a new flag before someone forgets to do that. So that is also appreciated. I could go on and on, but we're here tonight to say thank you to Michael. The job of a school custodian is not an easy one. You know that. Your staff members who are here to support you, thank you guys and girls for coming, know that. It's often a thankless job and sometimes a job that goes unnoticed. Oftentimes you're working when people aren't here, so people don't see how hard you all are working. So to have done this job for Acushnet Public Schools for 34 years is really something to be proud of. So thank you, Michael, from on behalf of the school administration and the school committee, all of our staff, our families, our students, all of the kids that have had you as a school custodian, and I know you and all custodians make their mark. I remember the custodians in my school, that helped me fix my Peter Pan lunchbox at the kindergarten so many years ago. So you definitely make a difference, and you have made a difference. Thank you very much.
I'm not sure, Mr. Willett, did you want to say a few words?
I think Kristen pretty much summed it up. I mean, if there was ever a good time to retire, it would be now, after what we've been through in the last 2 years. And like Kristen kind of touched base on, if I wanted to know the price of rock salt in 1998, Michael was here to tell me, it was so much a bag back then. So obviously we appreciate his effort, and like she touched base on his attendance, our team was outstanding during COVID, trying to get through these stressful times, and we really appreciate his effort, and I'm glad they could recognize him tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your dedicated service all these years to the school. We really appreciate your commitment, and we wish you all the best. Does anyone else want to say a few words? No?
Just
congratulations.
Yes, we do have something to share. If you want to come on up, or I can come to you.
Just watch the photo.
It's just a token of our appreciation for all your years of service. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
We have a minute if you want to.
Oh, just thank you anyways. Thank you for everything.
And I know that your colleagues are here tonight supporting you, and you've been wonderful to our district. Thank you for all of your years of service and your attendance. Outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. Next up, I have my personnel report. You can see that we have 5 new staff members, 2 resignations, and 3 retirements. The one thing that I will add for this personnel report is because there are nurses listed on the new staff, that is something that actually has to be voted on by the school committee. So as you know, the superintendent manages the hiring process and selects the candidate, and obviously keeps the school committee informed and makes a recommendation. So based on my recommendation, I'm hoping that we can have a vote forward to approve this personnel report, which would include the 2 nurses listed as new staff members. And I'm so happy that, it's been a struggle to find certified nursing staff, and we're in a much better place. So with that being said, I would ask the chairperson if we could vote on that tonight.
Okay. And so what you were voting in is the 2 new nurse positions?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not finding that document at the moment, but.
You can vote on the personnel report.
You
Oh.
can
So we
vote
can
to
vote
accept
to
the
accept
personnel
the personnel
report
Okay,
and
yeah.
place on file.
Thank you. So if I could request a motion of approval, please, for the personnel report.
Placed on file. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, in going along with Mrs. Charpentier's sentiments during delegation tonight, we have our Detecting Canine program that we started here in Acushnet Public Schools as another mitigation factor to help us with COVID. So we work very closely, and I would like to call up Captain Paul Douglas, Officer Teddy Santos. We work very closely with them weekly, where they come in with Hunter and Duke, and it's amazing the training that these dogs have. And as Mrs. Charpentier alluded to earlier, they go and they sniff out areas. One thing that we started that was a little different over the past couple of weeks is while the children were at lunch, we went into the classrooms to see, and we've had a couple of hits on air filters. We know those filters need to be changed, but they're doing their job. But overall, I have to say that I think we're getting a clean bill of health at Acushnet Public Schools. I also want to thank Sergeant Fonts from the Acushnet Police Department, because he's also been accompanying these gentlemen from the Bristol County Sheriff's Office weekly. And in addition to what it's doing in terms of COVID, I think the added bonus that you heard from Mrs. Charpentier tonight is to see the joy of what it's doing for staff and students. People are requesting now every week for the dogs to come in, and obviously we can't do that, but if we can and we have a few extra minutes, they're literally in and out once a week, 20 to 30 minutes. But I want to welcome Sheriff Hodson tonight with us. He's joining us from Washington, D.C. And Sheriff, if you'd like to open it up, and then I'll invite your colleagues to come up to the podium and speak about the program. But I wanted to thank you for including Acushnet in this wonderful program.
Well, thank you, Superintendent, and Chairwoman Downing and members of the committee. Thank you for having us and bringing us to talk to you about the program. I have to tell you, when we went to meet with Superintendent Bailey, she was very open to the idea, but also very inquisitive about the details of the program, how it would affect the kids, what would be the protocols and so forth. And so I think once we had the chance to really spend time to talk with her, she understood and really, I seemed to feel, was interested, obviously, in really embracing the program. And I have to tell you, kudos to all, because you are the 5th district in the United States to take on this initiative, and of course leading the nation by taking this proactive step. And we embraced this program early with the first law enforcement agency in the nation to do it. And it really is a partnership, as Superintendent Bailey said, with the Bristol PD, our staff, and also all of you. We always believe that that's what our role is in the Sheriff's Office, in partnership, in solving problems, and addressing issues. This one's a big one and it's exciting. I just was in the company of Senator Grassley today and talked to him about the program, and thought that any efforts that we could make in Washington to provide funding for sheriffs across the nation to do this would be hugely helpful, not only to the schools, the administration and the school committees, but also to the families to know that we're proactively going after this and identifying things beforehand and minimizing the risks that it could spread in families and classrooms and so forth. I won't get into a lot of the detail because I know Captain Douglas and Officer Santos are both there. I don't know if they're going to be bringing in their real stars of the show onto review, but I know Captain Douglas is going to go into a little more detail with you about it. And I just wanted to be here to say thank you to all of you for your proactive steps, Superintendent Bailey and to the school committee, for your continued great work in supporting the kids of Acushnet.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Sheriff.
So Captain Douglas and Officer Santos.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it, Superintendent, for inviting us and having us here today. And it's been a pleasure. It's been great. Like you heard one of your colleagues talk about the dogs, and this is what we're running into all our school districts that we're currently in. 5 districts, 27 schools total. It's been great. I think most of you have probably seen Hunter and Duke. They're very friendly, a lot of energy, very, very good with the kids, as we've all noticed and we've seen. And like the sheriff said too, we just, this is just another barrier to help protect the kids and come home to their families and not spread this virus and everything else. And thank you again, Superintendent, for allowing us to come into your district and help out, stop this spread. The sheriff started this program. It wasn't to do away with masks or do away with vaccines or anything like that. This is just another layer, like I said, to help protect these kids and stop this spread. And I just want to thank you, ma'am, too, for the kind words. And it was a pleasure. We had a blast, and I understand, I haven't seen the pictures yet, but I understand, we had a couple of good ones, so Sergeant Fons took care of the prize for that, so we appreciated it.
I also want to thank you because you were so willing when I asked you about the town's testing clinic to go in on a Saturday and come into our gymnasium because we were having weekly testing clinics and to have the dogs go through. And it was not even questioned. And then you took it upon yourself to continue to work with the town because we consider ourselves partners with the town as well. So I feel like this has been an extension of our partnership now with the town. And again, you've been so gracious to do that as well. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's been going very well. Just another layer. Going to the COA, it was when you were testing here. Officer Santos came a few times as well on a Saturday, giving up his time. Just going with the dogs, and it kind of helps like Steve and his staff that you might not have to waste time and product and stuff spraying on an area that might not need it. And so the dogs have been helping out. What we've noticed too lately is the numbers have dropped, as you all know, and our indications in schools have dropped. And I do want to give Steve Roulette kudos on a great job here in Acushnet. Steve worked with my mother in the town of Dartmouth for years, and he was a hard worker 30 years ago, and he's still a hard worker. So kudos to you, Steve, and your staff, and because we really haven't had a lot of indications in Acushnet, which is just shows that you and your staff are doing a tremendous job keeping the school clean.
And I have to tell you, as an added bonus that I didn't realize we would even see, was just talking to kids and telling us that it's the best day of their life. And I think it's just the shock of maybe seeing a dog in school, but the joy that you have brought to our school community, I cannot express the words to tell you what it's done for our students, especially during this pandemic. And you heard from one of our teachers today, and like I said, I get requests every week for, and I know the dogs can only do so much, but everybody wants Hunter and Duke. The kids are super excited to see the dogs. They're great when we pass by. And I also have to give a shout out to Sergeant Fons. What's also been great about this program is we have a local police officer who has now been establishing wonderful relationships with our kids, handing out stickers. Again, age-appropriate questions, asking children, do you know your address? Who here, you're in line, not wasting any time. Does anybody know their address? And great, you get a prize. Like, the kids are thriving on this partnership that we started. And I'm so glad that we can continue this. I think the communication has been wonderful. And I cannot thank Sergeant Fons, Captain Douglas, Officer Santos enough for what you've brought to our district. And I don't know if Officer Santos has any comments before we turn it over to the committee for questions.
Thank you.
Short and sweet.
On a serious note, thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to thank the sheriff again also for the opportunity to be able to be a part of this program. Back when we started the academy in May, I had no idea how far it was going to go, how successful we were going to be, and if it was even going to be possible to be able to train the dogs. It's like the dogs have been doing it for their entire lives. It's like they were born just to find COVID. It's crazy, it's incredible, and Duke amazes me every day, and I don't want to speak for Cap, but working with the dogs and seeing what they can do and just how accurate they are. It's incredible, and I'm very thankful to the schools for allowing us to come in, and it's been arms wide open, and we've been very welcomed into the school systems and into the community, and pretty much it. But I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have a quick story. One of the things that they did, and if you don't ever witness this, I would invite you to come in and see this, but they took someone who had COVID, they took their mask and hid it in this room between the books, and Hunter immediately found it and Duke, I'm sorry. Hunter would have done it too, but Duke was there that day, and it was just an amazing thing to see. So if you've never seen this, and I guess for me, the true joy has been the children and seeing their reactions. And I had a student at Ford Middle School hugging the officers from the Bristol County Sheriff's Office and saying it was the best day of his life. He was having a bad day. He was so happy to interact with the dog, and we just happened to bump into them when we were doing the main office. So I can't thank you enough, but at this time, I'd like to open it up if you have any specific questions, as we have the sheriff here and these officers, so.
Any questions? I mean, I think it's great. Thank you for coming to the district.
I have a question. Can you just break down what they do, specifically, when they go into a classroom, or what they, how would they interact, and, just the...
Absolutely, sir. It's a great question, too. So, our dogs, just to kind of rewind the wheel, we started this program in May of 2021 and went through about approximately 10 weeks of training. And the training started at Florida International University with Dr. Dieta Mills and her staff, who runs the Forensics Institute at the university. And we partnered up with them. The sheriff had seen this program. Somebody had alluded to it, and he looked into it. And it was a great program. So basically, we started, and we got up and running in August of 2021. And when we go into the schools, we go into nursing homes, public offices, and basically our dogs can go anywhere. If we brought the dogs in this room right now, they wouldn't even interact with anybody. They would do their job. They might go over to you. The main goal is surfaces, whether it's chairs, whether it's desktops, whether it's computer boards, phones. And if they do have COVID odor, they'll sit, and then they're rewarded with their toy. And basically, what it is the dogs are detecting the metabolic change, and not to sound like a scientist, because I'm not, but basically, the metabolic change in your body, it gives off an odor, and that's what these dogs detect. And it could actually be on the surface from anywhere from 2 hours to 20 days. Depending, especially a porous surface like a couch, like a cloth couch or a cloth seat, or like that material in front of you, sir. COVID would, depending on room temperature, could survive on that. But COVID is easy to destroy. Any kind of sanitizer that you're using in the school, it doesn't like it. It does eliminate the virus. But it's a great tool. I've been canine 17 years of my 23 years on the sheriff's office, and I've worked patrol dogs and drug dogs, and never thought I'd ever be doing something like this, but I'll tell you, I'm having the time of my life. And to see these kids and even the staff members, and not to get off track, but working with the police department, and Sergeant Fonts, who I've known for 20 years of my career, it's really, we build a great relationship. And this is Canine Duke. Okay. So we actually put a live hide out, and you all will be able to see Canine Duke, what he does. He'll put him in a sit, he'll put a collar on him, and he'll give the search command. Yeah. And he'll use that nose, and he'll search. Duke is 15 months old. He's a yellow lab, full of energy. But as you can see, very, very friendly, and you can honestly see why these children love these dogs so much. So what happens too with odor is, if you can picture a cone, we call it a scent cone, and what they do is it starts at the source and it goes out, as you can see, change of behavior, and so then he's rewarded with his toy. So what happens where Sergeant Fonts is, that odor actually kind of cones out, and they narrow it in. But they picked it up quick. Within 1 day, they had the odor. They already had the odor. And how we trained them was both dogs, Hunter and Duke, was with a positive COVID mask from a positive COVID patient, and that's how they were trained.
Very cool.
That's very...
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's cool.
So we have no COVID in this room?
No, actually,
Well,
sir,
just-
we actually, K-9 Duke actually swept before you all arrived. He actually swept the whole library.
Okay.
So just to keep everybody safe, and there were no alerts, which is good.
We can take a mask
So we
off.
figured, you had asked how it works, I figured.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. No, thank you. It's
Well,
great to see it in action,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely easier, than explaining sometimes for everyone to understand.
Not often we get a K-9 at a school committee meeting, right?
Correct, ma'am, absolutely.
Does anybody else have any?
I have a question for you. So we all know that COVID isn't going anywhere anytime soon. How long is this program going to be active for? Do we know?
As long as it needs to be. This program doesn't have an end sight right now. We're going to continue to work and continue to come into the schools throughout the rest of the school year, summer programs. We've already got some requests for baseball, to do the dugouts and hoops and stuff, throughout the summer. So we're gonna, no end in sight, we're just gonna keep plugging.
Gotcha.
That's great.
And if anybody, out there that's watching that is interested in this program that might be from another agency or, from another district, all they have to do is they can email the sheriff, sheriff@bcso-ma.org. They can email myself, Paul Douglas, @bcso-regular-ma.org, and just do a simple letter to Sheriff Hodson, and we'll be there to help you. He hasn't denied one request yet, so I don't see him denying any. He's not laughing.
I just have one quick question. Oftentimes you see in K-9 units, German Shepherds being used. Can any breed of dog be trained to do this, or is it specific breeds that?
That's a great question, ma'am. For this specialty, we wouldn't want, not that German Shepherds or Belgian Malinois wouldn't do a good job at this, but this is what you want to bring into a school.
Less intimidating.
A lot of it's image, ma'am.
Yep,
To
yep.
come in, when we come in with Duke and Hunter, everybody's
Right.
open arms and they want to, hug them and kiss them and, and everything else. When you bring in a German Shepherd or, a Belgian Malinois, it can be a little intimidating.
Yeah.
So when the sheriff started this program, that was pretty simple request that
Right.
we go with a lab and
Makes a lot of sense, yeah.
you can't go wrong.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome, thank you.
Okay, wonderful.
Again, I just want to, in closing, thank Sheriff Hodson, yourself, Captain Douglas, and Officer Santos, and Sergeant Fonts from the Acushnet PD. Not only are you doing a great service for our school district and our community, but just the way you interact with our children and our staff, it's like you've been working in schools your whole life. It's amazing. So we're glad to have you part of Acushnet. We're so happy that we are your favorite school district. And we know that this will continue because I know that we utilize the sheriff's office for painting and other projects. This is just another extension of our partnership, so I cannot thank you enough. So thank you, thank you.
If I could just make one request, you'll be the #1 school if we get a Wildcat shirt.
Oh, done, no
One
problem.
on the back.
No
Why
problem.
not Duke? We've got to put Duke and Hunter up.
But I just, in closing, for myself and on behalf of Teddy and the sheriff, we just want to thank you, Acushnet Wildcats, for having us come in and I got a shout out to Sergeant Fonts, who's been a personal friend of mine for probably 20 years, and Chief Chris Richmond, for just being, when I talked to Chief Richmond when you had reached out to me, Superintendent, he said, Cap, whatever you need, and he's let us use, Sergeant Fonts, and he's bubbly, he's great with kids, and
Bubbly.
he's a great guy. I mean that, so thank you all again, we appreciate it.
All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, great. All right, so moving along here, so we've got,
That was very different. from
yeah,
the school
that was
committee,
great.
But it was fun. Next up, we have a curriculum instruction and assessment update. And I just want to remind you that we did not have our meeting in January, so a lot of this is kind of lumped in together. So Angie Ruggieri, our curriculum director, and Kyle Gallivan, one of our academic coaches, will be presenting tonight. Christine Snell was unable to be here tonight, wanted to be here, but could not. She is our other coach, but you will certainly have an opportunity to meet with her as we will be presenting more data as time goes on. But if you look at the rest of my agenda, assessment and curriculum calendar, the wing groups, all of those bullet points will be included within the presentation, so it should move right along, okay?
Okay, great.
All right, so with that being said, I'd like to welcome Angie Ruggieri and Kyle Gallivan to our meeting.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, school committee members, Dr. Bailey.
Before you begin, I just want to say that even during a pandemic, we've had a super strong focus on curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And I think what you will see tonight in the presentation is that that work continues. Some of it started during the hybrid model last year, and some of the templates that you're going to see tonight, the documents, they're living documents, work in progress. But I'm super proud of the work that this department is doing and the teachers. It's been a real team effort with the principals. So thank you again, and you'll see from the presentation tonight all the hard work.
Thank you. So that's a tough act to follow, but we'll give it our best. I agree. I'm really proud of the work that our department has been doing. A lot of the things that we've been working on, we've been building from the ground up, so it just feels like it's been a monumental task, and we still have a lot of work to do, but we've made a lot of headway. Both Kyle and Christine have been amazing on the team, and they've just been working so hard and working so nicely with the systems that were already in place and with the teachers and administrators in the district. So what we're going to cover tonight is the curriculum and assessment calendars, the wing groups, which is like our intervention system that we have in place, the coaches overview. We'll do a middle of year data review, and then Kyle will talk about his trip to the George Washington Teacher Institute. So, are you looking at the presentation right now?
We are.
Okay. So I think that I linked that APS curriculum programs and assessments. It's a huge spreadsheet with a lot of tabs on it. And that spreadsheet at some point is something that we're working toward. It's a living document. But it's something that we're working toward getting to the point where we can share it with the students and families in the community. And what it has on there is our an overview of all of our curricular programs and assessments. It has a pacing guide by grade and subject. It has our district-wide assessment calendar, our cycle of adoption for curriculum, and then the ways that students and teachers can access all of these programs. So we're just going to break it down, and I'm sure I'll present on all of that throughout the course of the year, but tonight we're really going to focus on the core pacing guide and the assessment calendar. So if you're in that spreadsheet, if you could just on the bottom there should be a tab that's called core pacing guide. And you can see that in the columns, we have a column for every week of the school year. And then the rows are by grade level and by subject area. And it can look a little bit overwhelming when you see the whole K-8. But, you know, say you were a parent, you might just pick a lane to be in, right? So if you had a kindergartner, you might follow the weeks and be able to see. It might help guide conversations with your children at home. Oh, you're learning about this, you're learning about this in, you know, ELA this week, and have those conversations. It's also a useful tool for our specialist teachers to be able to refer to that when they're planning out and mapping out their curriculum for the year. How can they tie their curriculum into what's happening in the classrooms? And again, that's a work in progress. Some of our teachers are feeling the pressure of staying on track, and so we're constantly talking with them. Where are you? How is the pacing going? And we're making adjustments as need be. But it's a way to ensure that all teachers in a grade level are, in the same spot, and also that we get through our curriculum throughout the course of the year. And then there's another tab called Assessment Calendar. And that looks a lot like the pacing guide, where every week of the school year is on that spreadsheet. And it just kind of spells out for our teachers and administrators when certain benchmark assessments or state assessments will be taking place. So this is, there's hardly ever a time that we jump into this spreadsheet where there's not at least somebody else in it, in the district. People are referring to it all the time. We're kind of all on the same page, which is really nice.
And this is all new.
So all the everybody has access to this.
Everybody has access, it's a living document, people are using it all the time. It's good.
So sorry.
Thank you, it's okay. So I think we'll skip to the next slide and just talk a little bit about intervention. At the Ford Middle School, we've really worked hard to get these intervention periods into the schedule. So every day there's a half an hour period where students can work independently on their Lexia, which is an ELA support, or Freckle, which is a math support. And also during this time is when we have, I think we mentioned it maybe at our last meeting, but where we have some advanced coursework taking place in the Library Media Center also. So students who are really showing strong data in either math or ELA are able to come and do some advanced coursework of their choosing. And we also, during this time, we really dedicate, like our language arts or our math teacher resources or the reading specialists have these periods of time where they can work with students who need interventions in small groups or one-to-one. And then this way, the students are not being pulled from their regular classes to receive the interventions. And it's very similar at the elementary school. It's just a little bit more integrated into the ELA and math blocks, which are a little bit longer. Kyle?
Thanks, Angie. And good evening, Madam Chair, school committee members, and Dr. Bailey. So when we're looking at this graphic here, this is really looking at the coaches, we have had a coach, but now we have two coaches. Myself, I focus on the humanities side, so I'm looking at ELA and social studies. My counterpart, Christine Snell, she focuses on math and ELA. This graphic here kind of explains how we...
Math and science.
What did I say?
Like math and ELA.
Oh, the math and ELA, sorry.
STEM and humanities.
STEM and humanities, sorry about that. But this graphic here really outlines our job. Our first tier, tier one, think of that as like the whole group, all of our staff. We're providing professional development to them. That might be a professional development day or a CIA meeting. Then we don't just work there, we work with small groups, which is our tier two. At the middle school, we have our vertical plan time, where I work with ELA teachers and math teachers. Christine will work with science and math. And then at the elementary school, we work with grade level teams and we alternate our weeks. We might look at some data analysis, look at some assessments that are coming up, planning out curriculum, new programs. And then the last one is our tier three. That's our one-to-one coaching, and my personal favorite because I get to work with kids in the classroom. So that's where I might be working with an individual teacher. We might be modeling, trying something new. So this approach really helps us advance our craft. We're looking at how can we improve instruction, because we all can do that. So we're going to look at some data now. Our first group is going to be in ELA, and then we'll look at some math data. For ELA, we are going to be looking at Galileo, Dibbles, and Lexia, and the only difference with math is the STAR assessment. So we'll look at Acushnet Elementary School first. This first assessment that we're looking at is Dibbles, which is the Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. Basically, this assessment is telling educators what are the strengths and weaknesses of students when it comes to their reading skills. So when we look at the graph on the left, that's our beginning of year assessment. So that was done in September, and just recently in January we had our middle of year assessment on the right. From that graph you can see that about 77% of our students are meeting or above the benchmark, which is an increase of 11% since the beginning of the year. When I saw that, I was super excited, so being who I am, I had to dive into the data a little bit more, so I'm happy to share these 3 points. We've had a 24% increase in phonemic awareness, and that's really hearing and using sounds from spoken word. We also had some growth in decoding, which is breaking apart words in patterns or into parts, and then also some growth in reading or word reading fluency, so the ability to read words quickly, easily, and accurately. And now that's high level, so now we're going to break it down by grade. We're going to start with kindergarten, A because it's the earliest grade, and B because they had the best results. So we're starting off strong. So here you can see, just looking at the graph, the difference in the color from red going from a majority of our results down to a slim majority. So we had a 40% increase from the beginning of the year. About 65% total students are meeting benchmark or above benchmark right now. When we look at our next grade, or 2 grades, we have first and second grade. Those had double-digit gains as well. For our first grade, we increased 12%, and for our second grade, we are up 11%. One thing I did want to point out with this graph in particular is when you look at the top ones that are our beginning of the year September numbers in comparison to our middle of the year January numbers, that well below number has decreased a lot. And so one of our mission as a school, part of our mission as the school is to make sure we're educating all students and nobody is left behind. And this is evidence right here that we are targeting our interventions during that wing time in the middle, well, this is at the elementary school. So we have our interventions built into the schedule, but it's working at this point. Before I dive into this data, one thing that I did want to cover is that with DIBELS, the goal changes throughout the year because we want students to grow throughout the year. So when we look at beginning to middle of the year, there's probably about a 60-point spread between there. So when we look at third grade first at the beginning of the year in September, the top graph, we had about 84% of our students that came through the door at or above benchmark. So that's a true testament to the second grade team. Those students came in, 84% of them total were ready for the third grade. And when you look at the middle of the year assessment, we had a 1% decrease since the beginning of the year, but when I dove into the data, we had about 5 students that were within 5 or 10 points of the benchmark. So we really maintained that, which is hard to do when you're looking at such high performance. When we look at fourth grade, they also maintained their number of meeting, or excuse me, at benchmark or above benchmark. But the big takeaway is that we had a lot of our students move into the above benchmark category. So DIBELS focused in on reading skills. The next one is going to be Galileo. The Galileo assessment is an assessment of the standards for each grade level, specifically for this one looking at the ELA standards. And the percentages that you're looking at are the percentage of students who are proficient in those standards. So when we look at the first 2 columns, that's the school AES as a total school, where you can see the significant progress that we made. When we look at the grade levels, there was growth throughout them. When we look at where the next few columns, we have the reading literature columns next. That's going to be reading stories, folk tales, fables, etc. So that's the area that we have. We did pretty well with that one. We had some growth there as a school. We were that was our strong suit. I'm getting FMS is the opposite, so I was trying to get my thoughts straight there. Informational text is what we have to the left of us in the library. That's our reading informational text, nonfiction, where you're reading articles and stories. For the next one.
Should make sense. That's where we are.
Speaking of, as we mentioned before, we have our intervention block, and what we have here is an overview of students using Lexia. So Lexia is the program that we have that's going to look at what does the student need right now and try to fill in the gaps. So the program will provide some direct instruction through audio. It'll be a lesson through them, or it will generate a lesson that a teacher can then provide to the student that's pre-made. So when we look at that top graph, we had about 65% of students that were working below grade level at the start of the school year, and that number is now down to 33%. The next area that I would point your attention to is the movement into in or above benchmark. And percentages are great, but I wanted to share that that is equal to 177 students that were below grade level at the start of the school year at AES that are now working on grade level material because of their work on Lexia.
That's great.
All right, we're done.
Okay, so for the math data, the 3 benchmark measures that we use in the math is going to be the Dibbles, Galileo, and STAR assessments. And for kindergarten, we do the Dibbles with kindergarten in grade 1, Dibbles math, and it's a universal screening, screens for it's a progress monitoring assessment. That measures the acquisition of math skills, and we have here that we've decreased the number of students at the intensive level from 22 to 10%, and we've increased the students meeting benchmark from 22 to 35%. For grade 1, the intensive decreased from 13 to 10%, and the
Mrs. Gomes, you have a
Sorry,
comment?
should we stop you just for some clarity?
Yeah, can you just explain the red again? What exactly is?
So the red is intensive.
What does that mean?
So like it's below the benchmark.
Okay, so
Yeah.
red is below benchmark. Okay.
So we're striving for the benchmark.
Okay, understood now. Okay.
Thank you.
It's like, you might think of it as maybe like warning.
Okay.
And then for grade 1, so we had the level of students at the benchmark remain the same. For STAR, for grade 1, STAR Math is an assessment of math achievement, and it tracks the development in the four domains: numbers and operations, algebra, geometry and measurement, and data analysis, statistics, and probability. The percentage of students not meeting expectations decreased from 14 to 5%, and meeting or exceeding increased from 46 to 76%. In grade 2, we've decreased the number of students not meeting from 13 to 7% and increased the number meeting or exceeding from 54 to 58%. And all of our numbers on the STAR testing seem to be moving in the right direction. Grade 3, we've decreased the not meeting from 19 to 13%, and we've increased the meeting or exceeding from 45 to 58%. Grade 4, we've decreased the number of students not meeting from 21 to 7%, and the number of students in meeting or exceeding increased from 35 to 68%. And the Galileo math at the elementary level, we're seeing growth across all grade levels. The Galileo is an assessment for grades 2 through 8.
Could you, what is this telling me, right? Can you just explain this?
Oh, yes, so that's, so Galileo is measuring the number of students who are proficient in the state standards. So we've increased our proficiency in the state standards across the grade levels. And at the middle of the year, you can expect it to not really be, I mean, there's still a lot of standards, a half a year's worth of standards left to be taught. So these numbers reflect that we're in a good place, that we're making growth.
The teachers haven't taught all the standards yet. Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understood what that.
Okay, now we're going to move into the Ford Middle School data. We'll start with language arts.
Not bad. All right. So when we look at Dibbles, it crosses the parking lot for one grade level in 5th grade. So we wanted to share this graphic with you again with the composite score. And one thing I forgot to mention before, the composite score takes the sub-test that I mentioned before, the phonemic awareness, oral reading fluency, comprehension, and it kind of puts it together so that we can get an idea of, as a reader, how is this child doing. So that's what this graphic really represents. For 5th grade, we did maintain our performance. And again, this is one of those situations where we had about 5 students that were very close to the benchmark, and it got my steps in for the day, sorry. And potential spam is calling, so we're going to silence that. Sorry about that. So that's showing us our grade 5 composite for for Dibbles. Our FMS Galileo results, this is broken down the same way as in the elementary school. So we can see there was growth overall for the school and most grade levels when we look at all of the standards together. For this school, our area of strength was with our informational texts. So again, that's looking at nonfiction, articles, facts. The area that we're focusing on, our area of opportunity, would be our reading literature. One thing to note in our 7th and 8th grade curriculums, the first few units that we've had are focused on reading informational text. That's the focus of them. So now we're expecting them to move into the reading literature standards so that those scores will improve.
I have a question, Kyle.
Yeah.
So, because we have low scores in the grade 7 from 6 to 7, are we changing any curriculum in grade 6, or no, that's not the game plan?
Can you say that one more time?
With new curriculum, I just want to say, typically with new curriculum, oftentimes you do see a dip at the beginning because staff is learning the curriculum. I don't know if Mr. Gary wants to add to that, but part of this presentation that they are going to speak about is next steps and considerations for any data that might be low or a focus area so that you know what our focus is, because a big thing is we don't want to assess kids and do nothing with this data. So I will tell you that the staff are working very closely with our coaches, with Ms. Regari, on meeting and analyzing this data, and this data is really driving the instruction. So, like I've never seen before. I've been here, this is my 4th year, and I have to say this is the first year that I'm really seeing consistent in action best practices, and it's just only going to get stronger.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Another part to this is Lexia, and this is one graph. We're going to look at a different one for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but this is 5th grade. It's on the same program as the elementary school, which is Core 5. And when you look at this, we are seeing growth. We had students that were placed below grade level beforehand, and we are continuing to see growth. Lexia is filling in the gaps with their knowledge to move them into grade level material. And at the bottom there, grade 5 is one of those grades that consistently is around the 50% goal for Lexia. So year to date, they're at 61%, month to date, they're at 57%, and for the week before was 49%. So basically the way this works, the more you use the program, the more opportunities students have to identify their gaps, to practice them, to get the lessons that they need to fill in the gaps to improve those scores for Galileo. This is how we look at Ford Middle School. This program is called Power Up, and Power Up is organized a little bit differently than the Core 5. So they break it up into word study, which is reading accuracy and fluency. Then they also have grammar, which is how written language works, and then also comprehension, where this is trying to equip students with skills and strategies to become independent and strategic leaders. So throughout this, you can see the light color is that foundational K-2 skills. The darker blue is intermediate, which is grades 3 to 5, and then the darkest color is advanced or middle school, being the 6 to 8 standards. So throughout each of these strands, we can see growth overall as a school. I will say word study tends to be the favorite for the students because that's the most gamified. So what we're doing is we're assigning a different strand each week so that way we can make sure that we're filling in as many gaps as possible. And just like with the 5th grade, this is our usage. So what we're seeing is as we look from the year to date to the last 4 weeks, so the last month and the last week, the number of average minutes is increasing in each one of those so that we are providing those opportunities for students to get those interventions. We have the wind block twice a week, so that's about 50 minutes right there. We've integrated it into our classrooms so that there's about 20 minutes in the class period and teachers are assigning it for homework.
And can I just add, Mr. Gallivan, that during that wind block, not only are the students working on their Lexia and Freckle, but the teacher is taking small groups aside and working with students who need that intense help and intervention. So this is the first year that we've actually had this built right into the schedule, and we're seeing a good difference right now, as you can see from the data.
So just to clarify, we have during the wind block, children that need the extra help are getting it with their teachers in class. You have the average children that are doing their computer-based programming, and then you have the enrichment kids coming to another location for Excel information. Okay.
And that's the great part about Lexia.
Right, we've never done that before.
Oh, great.
Lexia does identify those students. So let's say that a student can't do CBC words. That's basic, but let's say that that's something that they need. The teacher gets a notice. This is what the student needs. Here's the lesson that you need to deliver to them. So it's seamless, really.
Okay.
And on top of it, there's a printed component, or they have pre-made Google Slides that this teacher can walk them through. So there's so many ways that we can reach the student, and so many different strategies to use.
And the great thing in the middle school level too is there's student choice involved. Like on Wednesday, they can, based on what they think their needs are, they can do one or the other. But there's also choice in the enrichment offered to the students. So it's been really good. And student choice is really important, especially for middle school kids.
So for math in 5th grade, STAR Math, we've decreased the number of students in not meeting from 54 to 36% and increased our meeting or exceeding from 46 to 55%. The STAR Math for grade 6, we've decreased the not meeting from 60 to 54% and increased from 41 to 47%.
I missed it.
Would it be not meeting 11 to 5%?
Yeah, I'm not seeing that.
Oh, well, partial, I'm sorry, I did partially meeting and not meeting. I clumped those two together. I'm sorry, yeah. So we did decrease the not meeting from 11 to 5%.
And same with the grade 5.
Yeah.
And again, the data is going in the right direction.
Right, right.
Yeah, what I did was and maybe that's different from what I did for the elementary, but I put the exceeding and meeting together, and then the partially meeting and not meeting together. Those were the numbers I was reading from, but we are decreasing our number of students who are not meeting expectations. So for grade 7, it went from 20 to 8%. In grade 8, so the number of students in the exceeding and meeting expectations went from 66 to 63%, and we increased in our, I'm sorry.
You're combining them again, yeah, 66 too.
We went from 33% down to 37% for the exceeding and meeting. I had those mixed up, I'm sorry. And then for the Galileo for FMS, we're seeing growth across all grade levels, and again, that's the grade level standards that they're being assessed on. So we are seeing growth across all grade levels, and we're in a decent place here. We still have a ways to go, but again, we're halfway through the school year, so hopefully with a good push. And then the next slide is considerations and next steps.
Can I just have a question about the 7th and 8th grade? Can you just quickly, and I don't need a novel on this, but what's the difference between STAR and Galileo? Like, is STAR more written based? What is the difference?
So STAR is adaptive. So a student's going to start out, and if they're answering a question correctly, they're going to get another question that's like maybe a little bit harder, and then a little bit harder, and then if they get it wrong, it'll drop back down, and it will adapt to the way that they're answering the questions. So not all students are going to get the exact same assessment. All the same questions. And it's kind of it's placing them, we have it set so we're placing ourselves against, so it's normed against the state level. With STAR, you can select to be normed against the state or nationally. And we go with the state only because the state standards in Massachusetts are more rigorous than the national standards. So if we were to compare ourselves nationally, these scores probably would look even better, but we're not really going for that, right? So we're in Massachusetts. So that's so it's going to be adaptive. Whereas the Galileo, each assessment usually has 1 to 2 to 3 questions per standard, and it's the same exact question for every student, no matter how you're performing.
And then do you want to just briefly talk about the triangulation of data and how we use that?
Yes. So what we're trying to do is have, a few good sources of data, because, somebody might just not be in a good place when they're taking one of the assessments, right? And we don't want that to be our only measure of how students, what they know and what they're able to do. So we like to take a look at, like for math, we're looking at STAR, we're looking at Galileo, we're looking at the unit assessments that come with the curriculum. And so we're just kind of trying to paint a more full picture so that we can, when we go to identify students who may be good candidates for enrichment or intervention, that we're really having a better idea of how they're doing.
Or also when we prioritize students for like Acceleration Academy, things like that, we're looking at all data points so we can prioritize, who we can offer the help to.
So overall, we're seeing growth in the district, and that's a really positive thing. And it is a testament to how hard everybody is working, and the level of commitment that people have had for all of these new initiatives. All these new curricular programs, learning all these new assessment programs, learning to read the data. I mean, it's a big ask that we have put out there, and everybody, teachers, they're rising to the challenge. It's not an easy year for them. We knew that it wouldn't be. We're asking a lot, and they're giving a lot, and it's. We can see that reflected in the data. Are there areas where we still need to, continue to move? Yes. We're aware. We're really drilling down. We just gave you kind of like the overview by grade level and district level or school level. But in these meetings of the vertical planning and the curriculum support time, teachers are really drilling down to like the individual student level. They're picking apart these assessments. They're looking at the questions that are being asked of the students. They're trying to figure out, why did this question trip up my students? Was it the way that the question was worded? Was it an open response question? Was it a multiple choice? So they're doing the hard work, and we will continue to do that. The administrators at both buildings and the coaches have been just amazing at working with the teachers and looking at the data and supporting them in these programs. So we'll keep drilling down and trying to get down to what does each individual student need. We're working really closely with the interventionists, the reading specialists, so that individual supports are being provided. We're going to continue our tiered model of support for educators as well as students. And we've been sending home data reports to parents more than we ever have before. So we just recently sent out the middle of the year ELA and math data reports. We did that at the beginning of the year. We'll do it at the end of the year. And we want to just make that, something that we do. And teachers they're here and they're offering extra support sessions before school at AES or after school at FMS. We just want to keep encouraging families to send your students for the extra support. They've missed a lot of time in school, and the teachers are here and they're ready and willing and able to provide those supports. We've got math academies running both February and April vacations. The enrollment numbers are going up after the middle of the year data went through, so we're really happy about that. We want to see those classrooms filled up.
So the district just got a $70,000 grant to run these acceleration academies. But I hope what you're hearing tonight is a real paradigm shift in the way we do business and the way we teach and learn. And I have to say, our teachers and educators are embracing what we're doing, and it's showing in the students' success, I believe.
Sorry, another question. So I know with all the new curriculum that we purchased this year and last year, everything's web-based. Are there any big problems with the people that we've hired or that purchased them from that is giving teachers trouble? Or is the curriculum pretty much good? Or how would you?
So they're blended. The
Okay.
ELA and the math are blended. So there is the online component, and we also they have books also, the students. So no program that we adopt is ever going to be perfect. And what we're doing now is these weekly meetings that we're having with the teachers, there's a lot of conversations about when you buy programs like this, they're going to throw in everything, including this kitchen sink. Like, there's just so many activities, and I know, like with the ELA curriculum, there's so many activities suggested to do in a course of a lesson, and you could never do them all. So we're really, Kyle's been working really closely with the teachers and the administrators in that building, working closely with the teachers to say, what are the activities that are really powerful? What are the ones that we need, that are must-dos, should-dos, and don't-dos? Is that how we're saying it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And that just takes time, like Dr. Bailey said, it takes time to train teachers, it takes time to train students, and so they're really learning, and then also, it may just be the delivery. So there may be aspects of a program that the content is there, but we need to change up how we're delivering it to students. We're seeing that at, say, the middle school with math. There's an online component to the math, right? And the students, they always learn the workaround. So they're clicking until they get the right answer. And that's not good. I mean, they're not doing the math. They're clicking until they get the right answer. And so now we're saying, okay, so what other activity could we assign? Because there's other activities. There's the book where they could do an extra practice. There's things like that. So how are we going to, Christine Snell, our coach for the STEM, is really starting to work very closely with the math teams at the middle school to try to implement a workshop model and really identify those powerful activities that they can do with students. And also, I would say a big thing with the math is we're really trying to build in just the math conversations and the thinking and the grappling and the sharing of ideas. So trying to get more of that into
Okay, so there's a learning curve to all of this.
There is a huge learning curve.
But the companies themselves, are they good? If you have a question or something's wrong, can you call the customer service place?
Yes.
Okay, so the things that we've purchased are good quality.
Yes.
And all green rated. Remember we went over
No,
that?
I know. I just want to. Just because they say it doesn't mean it's actually happening. So that's why I was questioning that.
Yeah, I mean, there's quirks with everything. So we've asked teachers, as far as the assessment calendar goes, so we've asked teachers at the end of a unit, give the unit assessment. We started that out, and the teachers were like, this is taking 2 days to give this assessment. The kids are stressed, we're stressed, this is not good, this is not working. And so we said, okay, well, let's look at the assessment. So now, that's part of it, and that's a good thing to do while you're teaching, is to know, what is the final assessment going to look like in the end. And so Christine and the administrator, like we're all working together as a team to look at these assessments and say, what is this question asking? Is it even related to the standard? And we have found, like with the math program, well, both. I mean, they have these huge assessments and we probably can take some of the questions out and still get a good idea of the students' knowledge, of the standards. So it's just a lot of tweaking and it's a lot.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just had a couple of comments, no questions. The first thing I wanted to comment on was the core pacing guide. I mean, 2 comments on that. I guess the curriculum, I think, sometimes would lay out just expectations that are not practical, and so to be able to grab the new curriculum and figure out, what we're doing and when, I think that's, great. And the second part of that is really a concern that I had when Dr. Bailey first got to the district was that I think there was a concern that no matter what classroom or what teacher the student got, were we delivering the same experience to those kids no matter who their teacher was? And to me, that document would kind of, in a way, franchise, that model for the teacher to make sure that they're on pace and doing all the same things, and the children are getting delivered all the same things in the classroom. So I think that's looks like there was a lot of work, but that's something that could, I think be great for the district. And the second comment would just be in the data in general. I mean, we asked for it, so this is a lot, but I guess we're relying on you a lot to be able to extract the real, like you said, core data. This is very overall, but I think we've got to continue to get this data as a committee. We've asked for it. I mean, continue to deliver it. This seems boring. I get excited, and I think this stuff's cool. So for us, we command a lot from the budget from the town, and for us to be able to directly point to the data and say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what's working, this is why. I think that's an important part of the due diligence on our part to get back to the town. This is what's occurring in the schools because of that. So those are really just my comments. I hope that we can continue to get the data going forward.
And Kyle and I could probably go on and on all night about the amazing things that they're doing, but Kyle and Christine, I would say at this point, have been into 95% of the classrooms. And if they've missed any, they're rescheduling to try to make that happen. But that's another piece of that, right? So when you had mentioned that what's happening from classroom to classroom and trying to get the best practice into each classroom and be in a similar place at the same time, the coaches are really going to be instrumental in helping to push that along.
And we realize that all teachers are in a different place, so their work is invaluable on a whole to continue to build the capacity of all of our educators. And we know that best practices continue to change, so we send them to professional development and just keep up on the research so that we're providing our teachers with the latest and the greatest to give our students the very best education. So does anybody else have any other questions?
No questions. It's just, I agree. We need to see the data, and it's a lot of work to put these presentations together for us, but I'm very grateful to see them, and it's helpful. It's just really valuable to see it. So thank you for putting in that time, putting these very well thought presentations together for the committee and for the public to see the progress we're making here as a school district. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for pushing its importance, because it really is, it makes a difference. So thank you.
Thank you. And as a segue, Kyle Gallivan is going to talk about his own professional development that we sent him to as part of the district and how that benefits the school district.
Just one quick point too. I was working with a team of teachers and I mentioned that data's relaxing when you're doing it, and they looked at me like I was crazy. I have some friends here. So when we think about history, one of the first people that comes to our mind is George Washington, and I'm one of those people, former history educator before I became a coach. So I'm going to talk to you about this program that I went to. I was first introduced to it at Paul Revere's house. That was our professional development in on the north end of Boston. And it was co-hosted by Paul Revere and George Washington's Mount Vernon. That was in my first year here in 2018, and they mentioned that they had a residential program where you got to go and live at George Washington's house. And me, being a history person, was like, I need to go to that PD. And one of the other fun things that they did at that professional development is that they talked about like the importance of place. So if we take this room as an example, and you're just an archaeologist that came into here in 100 years, and you're looking around and you're like, why are all these chairs in here? What's the purpose of all these chairs? Maybe people meet here. Why are books here? What do these books actually mean? And so it really got me thinking about, I love history and I always think about the 1700s, but how could we bring it to something where students could look around their own classroom and start to understand what this classroom, what the evidence is. But I applied in 2019, I got accepted, and then in March 2020, the world closed down and I couldn't go. So last year I was able to go again. This is a national program. Mount Vernon puts it out to everyone, and you can see on my slide that I have those little pins as to where everybody came from. So we had a gentleman from California. He was the longest serving teacher in the LA County Public Schools. He was one of our members. We had people from Florida, he was our facilitator. We had people from, we had two other people from Massachusetts. We had people from New Hampshire. We had people from Michigan, and then there was Kyle from Acushnet. Nobody knew what Acushnet was, but there I was representing. So it was fun. When we look to the right-hand side, that's all of us. That's our cohort. We were a pretty diverse group from different backgrounds, different years of experience in education, different settings. We had librarians, administrators. We had classroom teachers from 5th grade, 2nd grade, up to high school. So it was a great time there.
And the application process for this particular conference was rigorous.
It was, yes.
You had to apply, write, an essay.
Yep. Dr. Bailey was kind enough to write me a letter of recommendation. I had to get 2 more after her as well. It was definitely a process, and it's hard to get into. So it's something that normally you don't get in on your first try, which yeah. So part of the other part to going to this program is that you get to be exposed to world-renowned historians. So as you see on the slide up here, these are the presenters that came. We did have Lori Glover. She was our lead scholar. She was from the University of St. Louis. Her talks focused on George Washington in general. She focused in on women during the colonial era. I learned from Kate Brown, I learned about the economics of the colonial period, which I didn't realize that they had documents to talk about that. I love presidential history, so the last person on the top row, Lindsay Travinsky, she's written a book about the presidential cabinet, so I was all about that. We also had some historical interpreters. Brenda Parker, she was a person who impersonated or was a living historian, interpreter for a slave that lived on George Washington's property. It was so powerful, all of us were in tears afterwards. We also had Native voices represented. We had performers who were doing it was before the piano. They were doing that too. So my favorite part though was led by Samantha Snyder, the person on the bottom right, because if we go to the next one, she was the reference librarian, and I got to see George Washington's books, which as a historian, oh my gosh, that was the best thing ever. But on the top right, that was George Washington's house. The first night we got to have some appetizers and drinks on his front porch. And there I am in my nice Acushnet sweatshirt. I represent Acushnet again. We also got to go and watch the sunrise 2 times during our trip there. And on this one in particular, we had bald eagles flying around, which was really symbolic for me. Like I mentioned, that bottom photo of documents was George Washington's handwriting. It was actually a list of all of his, what he had in his kitchen. So you could see how many chickens he had, how many pigs he had, how much salt he had, all written in his own handwriting. He was kind of particular about all those notes that he took. But one thing that really stuck with me was that brick on the top left. If you kind of look carefully, you can see some letters engraved in there or carved into the brick. That's from the Civil War, which I didn't expect to learn about going to George Washington's house, but during the Civil War, this was neutral territory for the North and the South. So the soldiers would go there, and some of them would etch their names or their initials into the brick, which it was so fascinating. So the real goal of this program, again, is to increase my content knowledge, and I can bring it back now. So when we look at our curriculum, we've got 8th grade civics. This was all about civics and government. Totally prepared to support that 8th grade teacher. We look at 5th grade being a U.S. history focus. Again, this is where we can look at it. And on top of that, it was a time to network. I have 25 people from across the country that I can reach out to. At this point, we were exposed to different strategies that we could use to inform history education. But I did want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Bailey and the district because they made this possible from their support. So this is just one professional development, but this was the best that I have ever gone on. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for everything that you're doing, Kyle.
Yes.
And I just wanted to share that because oftentimes you might hear about our staff going on a trip, but this one was special, right? So way to represent Acushnet. And I thought it was really interesting, and you can certainly bring back all of the ideas and share them with our teachers, especially now as an academic coach.
Right.
So we're all about building capacity, as you know, and we're going to continue to do that with everybody. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Gallivan?
I can go into a lot more detail. Just let me know.
Excellent job.
Thanks.
Great,
Well,
thank you.
so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, and
All
I think
right.
that concludes my
It does.
report for tonight.
It does. All right. So we can move on to the business manager's report. Mrs. Flynn.
Okay, thank you. I have, in your packet, you have the report from January's meeting, and I'll briefly go over that in addition to February's. So most of your documents that you have, you've seen before, the budget update to the school committee and the budget summary. And so in January, the budget update to the school committee, you have, the typical listing of our surpluses and deficits and where we anticipate we're going to, end the year. February's is a little bit different, same format, however, you can see that at this point I was able to bring in some facilities expenses, some utilities. We had some catch up with our utilities, with our electricity, so you can see that, the change from January to February. So really quick, in January, you see our surpluses, which is due to salaries. We've talked a lot about that at previous meetings. For all the movement that we've had versus the positions that we budgeted for and where we actually are at this year. Contracted services, we've had contracted services for nurses where we've had some nurse vacancies, and we've had a small amount of custodial contracted services also to fill in where we've had some staff leave of absences and just needed a little bit extra support. We did get in our high school tuition invoices for New Bedford and Fairhaven, so you can see where we're at with that. This year, unlike some years, we do have a deficit in high school tuition, so you can see, but fortunately that's balanced off by surplus in salaries, as I mentioned. We also have a deficit in school choice. That is it's an amount that is told to us from DESE. That's not something that we're able to really accurately budget for. We can just kind of take a look at who we had in school choice last year, look at if they're going to still be in school the next year, but then we don't necessarily know other than if our 8th graders tell us that they're going to go to school choice somewhere. And oftentimes some of the students are students that we haven't had in Acushnet Elementary or Ford Middle, but are Acushnet residents nonetheless. They're attending some school choice placements. You can see the out-of-district tuition, and I'm kind of going back and forth for both January and February here in the interest of time. So you can see in February, we do have a deficit in out-of-district tuition. Now, just a small one. Why this is we had, have a grant that we had thought was going to cover a placement or part of a placement, but we're instead using it for some contracted services instead. So that grants is not coming in to help us with the out-of-district tuition. But again, as you know, this changes from month to month, sometimes from week to week, with some of the placements that we have changing. So the best we can do is just to keep looking at it, reporting on it consistently. So, you can see here that we have three potential placements pending that could impact the budget both this year and next year. So, when I speak to you in March, maybe some of those will be more, nailed down, or I can say, nope, those didn't happen, or yes, they did. So you see we have a surplus for out-of-district transportation this year and some deficits in technology. Right now that's being driven, we had purchased just recently, and they're going to be installed very soon, an additional 6 touch view panels. So in some of those classrooms that didn't have it, we purchased those to kind of complete the cycle with those. Again, some anticipated health services deficits. You should see those stay but not keep increasing, because now we have hired school nurses. So we will be paying our own nurses rather than the agencies. Of course, if there are some absences, we would still need to look to the agencies, but for the most part, that hopefully has stabilized. Additionally, we have some facilities deficits, most likely in electricity. We are running our HVAC systems constantly now, keeping everything going for better ventilation. So as you can imagine, up goes the electric bill, and also when we're keeping our windows open, we've had to turn the heat up so for everyone's comfort level. So our oil has increased as well. So you can see, that's just a quick shot at the budget deficits there. So some other things that, I reported on in January, just real quick, I gave you a year-to-date look at our grants activities. So if you look at the January Business Managers Report, looks like this. You can see all of our grants that we have listed, the allocation amount, the amount expended year-to-date, and the balance year-to-date. So I do have an update for that. As Dr. Bailey mentioned, we just received a Math Academy grant, so that is not included in this total. So right now the total before the Math Academy grant of grants for this year is $1.5 million. So you can add $70,000 to that, and that would be our grants for this year. And also we did just get approval for the ESSER 3 grant in the past week. So you see in the expended column, there's nothing expended. That's because we couldn't start spending it because it hadn't been approved yet from DESE. So we are going to start spending that down. ESSER 3 is good until 2024. I think ESSER 2 is good. You can spend until 2023. So that gives us some flexibility over the coming years. Does anyone have any questions on the budget? Yes.
Can you just remind us which grant was it? I believe, wasn't it the ESSER 3 that we got community feedback on? Was that the one? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And we can't begin spending that until when?
Right now we can.
Okay.
We just got approved. Yep.
Okay, good.
So we can start spending that now. And as part of the approval process, I believe we need to post it on our website, so you should see something posted on the website. I believe I've just read that from DESE, that you have to post your planned expenditures for ESSER 3. So,
Madam Chairman, I have a question. On the ESSER grants, will we get a breakdown of how it's being spent? Well, like a budget, so we know how, where it's going and what it's being used for.
Definitely. Another thing we could also do is give you a copy of the grant itself. We took the public input from all stakeholders. For example, one of the high-level interests that people were really concerned about was HVAC. So we know we have a couple of projects that will get approved for the ESSER 3, and we'll get some projects going with that grant money for that. There's other things too, but maybe for the next school committee meeting, we can certainly get you information on the grants in terms of what the goal is and the projects.
Thank you. Very excited.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the budget or grants? Okay, so real quick, facilities, we've had a couple of projects going. You can see those in your packet, where you did some work over the holiday break, and we do have some work upcoming over February break. In brief, we've worked on some univents at FMS, and also the smoke detectors here at FMS were cleaned. So sometimes we would get an alarm because it has a dirty smoke detector, so it thinks that it needs to go off, and so we had those professionally cleaned out, so hopefully we will be able to do the same at the elementary school. It was more of a problem here, so that's why I tagged it here first. We have had some roof repairs at both buildings. You know, when we do have a lot of rain or snow, we do get some leaks that we just have to address. The roof project is right now on schedule to start as soon as school ends. That's replacing that smaller section at AES, not the entire roof. Again, Dr. Bailey mentioned we had the sheriff's office here to do some painting in some classrooms, and we've been doing some deeper cleaning. Mr. Willett, I don't think he's here still, but he sought out and applied for a grant to update our heating system motor controls at AES. So that'll help us regulate the temperatures more, monitor the temperatures more, and be more efficient and not, and you know, be able to hopefully have some cost effectiveness. If approved, which I think this project has been approved, has an estimated cost of just under $17,000. It will be of no cost to us. And we're being told that the estimated 5-year savings is about $27,000. So that's, that'll be good if that comes to fruition. The shed is almost done. Old Colony has finished their part. The last phase is the doors. So we have a purchase order out with a garage door installer, and that should be getting done soon. We did do some air purifier cleaning over the break, so some of the filters, and we also bought some replacement filters. So that's the facilities update for January. February, let's see, what else is new in February? Okay. Of course, last week's blizzard, our custodians and Mr. Willett worked so hard cleaning up, getting us ready to start school, you know, back on Monday morning. So that was an enormous task. I'm sure everyone who owns property, you know, multiply that by the amount of road we have here, so it was difficult. One thing, we're going to have to look at replacing our sander and our plow. They're in need of replacement. We're trying to seek quotes for both right now, so hopefully we can get that taken care of. You know, we continue with our daily COVID cleaning of desk tables and touch points. Of course, in the winter, we're doing some heating system repairs and tweaks. We will be short-staffed at AES coming soon because of Michael is retiring, and we do have someone out on a medical leave, so we will do the best we can to keep pace with that. And some work that we're doing at during vacation, we're going to replace the FMS gym curtain. The motor died, fried out, and they're going to come and replace that, and also inspect our gym equipment. We've got some electrical projects, floor and ceiling tiles, classroom painting, and we continue in our upgrade of all of our touchless equipment, so we're going to install about 40 more paper towel dispensers that are touchless. So, and upcoming, we have a purchase order out for an in-ceiling dehumidifier to address the excessive humidity in the AES yellow wing. So that has been an ongoing problem, so hopefully this will help us out. And again, just continue with our sensor faucets and flush heads. Some other things we're looking at, we have a cycle of replacing cafeteria tables at Ford Middle School, so we'll be doing that. We just recently bought some desks and chairs that were much needed for AES, and we're also looking for some other furniture for FMS instruction and some custodial equipment upgrades. So that's just a quick snapshot of what we've been doing in facilities. Does anyone have any questions on that?
And I just want to mention that we did store a lot of furniture during the pandemic, and some of it we had to get rid of because of the mold, and you know, it was unfortunate, but it was sitting there for well over a year. We saved what we could, but we're in the process of continuing that work as well.
Could any of these grants cover that loss?
Well, right now, we're just using the local budget funds. If we had to, we do have some funds written into ESSER to do some, we had, looked ahead and thought, we may need to use these grants to replace some of this furniture. Right now, it's minimal, so we should be able to take care of it in the local budget, and then preserve some of the ESSER funds for some other, other needed projects that aren't something that, is just an everyday thing. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
To the ESSER grant, do we have a summary of what the feedback was from the public?
We do.
Is that somewhere that
I
we
thought
already
we
have it?
presented it.
We did,
I
yeah.
thought
It
so.
might be
Do you remember when?
2 months ago.
November?
Okay.
She's gonna look it up while we talk,
So
and
it-
I can let you know what month that was in. We can certainly pull it from the drive.
We didn't discuss any details on what it would be spent on, right? It was just kind of categories, if I remember correctly.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
So-
So I think it's important at the next meeting that we outline, I think we talked about, one of the big things was a pavilion. And again, it had to fit certain categories, right? Like, we talked about the outdoor classrooms that were built by the Boy Scouts are great, right? But they're quickly put together, it's not like this professional, and it's not a huge thing. We were looking for something where we've got the land and the space, it'd be great to go outside with a whole grade level, perhaps, and do something. So that's like an example of a project that's COVID-related, where kids can go outside, take a mask break in the inclement weather with a roof over their head type of thing. So that was one idea.
Was it like the basketball courts, what potential use of the fund bank?
Yes, I'm not sure if that made it on there.
Yeah.
We had to get approval, and I know that Ms. Ruggieri has worked very closely with the DESI representative about what could be approved, what couldn't.
Sure.
So for the next meeting, I think that's a great agenda item to put forth in terms of what is specifically the goals. And the great thing is Mrs. Flynn mentioned, is that we have time. It doesn't have to be all spent within this fiscal year. And it's going to take us time, because these are bigger projects.
Okay, and just real quick, with our school lunch update, we had some fun projects going on. Jean Sheridan, our Director of School Nutrition, has reported they've been busy planning and getting ready for future food events, including the recent Ford Middle School PBIS Galaxy Donut making. So the PBIS students were making Galaxy Donuts. I had the opportunity to help them out with that yesterday, so that was a lot of fun. They just had to, dip their donuts in Galaxy swirled glaze, and then they got to serve them to the students at lunchtime. So that was fun. We're doing breakfast and lunch service during the upcoming Acceleration Academies, after school cooking club at Ford, green eggs and ham for Dr. Seuss's birthday celebrations, and we'd also like to do a PBIS activity at the elementary school, so that is in the works. So we're doing a lot of fun stuff with that too. So that is all I have for the school lunch, budget, and facilities update. Does anyone have any questions on that before I move on to my final topic? Okay.
You said like November 9th?
I found, John, thank you.
Thank you.
A lot has happened since then.
Yes.
So the final topic on my agenda item tonight is we are creating a fund for donations and gifts, and the money that comes in that, maybe is donated by the public or comes from our laundry bins out front will go into that fund. And Dr. Bailey and I have been advised by the town accountant that the first step is to have a school committee vote to establish the fund. And then we've further been advised that it needs to be also approved at town meeting. So that will be an upcoming article to approve the creation of this revolving fund. There are many different types of revolving funds that school departments and also town departments can have. And some of them, depending on the statute that they fall under, do require town meeting approval just to start it up. Some require town meeting approval to expend it every year. some require town meeting approval to continue it every year. So we're in the first stages, so our first stage is to have the school committee approve it, and then it would go to town meeting as we've been told.
You could just, what's the purpose of the funds or what's the intention of it? Just curious.
Do you take that?
Sure. We were looking to have a discretionary fund, whether it was for students or staff, because right now we have to ask the PTO for certain things, right? Because legally, you can't have certain things in the local budget. So one of the ways to help the community in terms of donation of clothing, it's a service, but it's also, we make a percentage of that every month, and a check is donated. So that's why this fund is being established for anything that really comes up. And you can imagine things come up and we're like, oh, we can't spend local budget money on that. That might be something for that local fund.
Okay, and when would we be using a third party to hold or escrow the funds or manage the funds?
It would be deposited with the town treasurer.
Okay.
So all of our departmental funds are deposited with the town treasurer and held by the town treasurer. So it would just be an account. And every expenditure must have a public purpose. So, there is some discretion on what is or isn't a public purpose, but, so all of these would have to serve the public purpose since it is a public fund, so.
Okay. So we need to vote to approve the creation of a donation and gifts fund.
So moved.
Second? Okay. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you, Mrs. Flynn.
You're welcome.
All right. So I'd like to welcome committee members at this time. If you have any updates to share with the public? No? Okay. And there are some communications listed there in our packets for your reference. We do have executive session tonight to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. So if I could have a motion to adjourn, we will move into executive session.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you need a roll call?
Not to return.
Okay, and not to return.
Yes, I was gonna.
Not to return. Do you need a roll call?
Sure, I'll take one.
Okay.
Mrs. Gomes?
Yes.
Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mr. Howcroft?
Yes.
And Mrs. Downing?
Yes. Okay, thank you.